지난 2008년 미국에서 시작된 금융위기는 바다 건너 중국의 고성장을 바탕으로 해결의 실마리를 찾았습니다. 그만큼 혼란스러운 글로벌 시장에서 중국의 영향력은 점점 더 커져가고 있습니다. 오늘은 모건 스탠리 수석 이코노미스트였던 앤디 시의 박사를 모시고 이에 대해서 깊은 얘기를 들어보겠습니다. 올해 초에 경기 회복이 더뎌지면서 더블 딥이냐 아니냐에 대한 논의가 많았었는데 아까 세계 전략 포럼에서 말씀하신 것을 들어보니까 더블 딥 쪽으로 좀 가닥을 잡으신 것 같은데 그 원인, 배경을 어떻게 설명하실 수 있으실까요?
Yeah, I think that the double dip has already begun. The trigger, there are two triggers. One is the European debt crisis. Europe has the policy response in Europe is to tighten fiscal policy and to loosen monetary policy. That has led to a major drop in the value of euro. So Europe wants to export, to increase exports to support its debt. That means that it's taking market shares away from Asia and the United States. So it's a negative factor for the global economy. The second is that China is tightening the property market. The property market is very big in China. It's the new property sales were 15% of GDP last year. So if the property market cools off, it will affect the economic growth a lot. So the slowdown you are seeing now in China is really due to the property tightening. Because of these two factors, the global economy is slowing down. Would we get another recession next year? We may not, but the growth rate certainly will go from over 4% for the global economy. Next year probably will be getting closer to 2%. So that's why I believe that the second dip is happening.
최근에 부동산에 대한 중국 정부의 긴축 정책이 지금 거래량을 굉장히 줄어들이게 하고 있는데 이게 적절하다고 보시는지 아니면은 좀 어떻게 보면 부작용이 있을지에 대해서는 어떻게 생각하십니까?
Yeah, I think that China is like building 1 billion square meters a year, so it's very large. The global commodity market like iron ore and copper, this is the most important source of demand. So if the Chinese property market fluctuates, it's going to affect commodity markets a lot. We're seeing copper and iron ore prices declining, mainly because that people are concerned China's property market will cool down.
부동산 정책이 완화된다면은 중국 정부가 이 세수 확보 때문에 그걸 완화시키는 건지 아니면은 경착륙에 대한 우려 때문에 완화시키는 면이 더 큰지.
I think that a lot of people want to live in cities in China, so property market should be big. Now the problem is the speculation is driving demand. A lot of flats are empty, and that really concerns the government. We don't know how many apartments are empty, probably over 10 million. So unless you stop speculation now, to stop the accumulation of empty apartments, otherwise one day there will be a crash. So that's why the government is very worried and it's adopting policies to limit, to prevent, to stop speculative demand.
올해 중국이 지급 준비율을 3차례 올렸었는데 이걸 두고 이제 금리 인상의 전조가 아니냐, 이제 곧 금리를 올릴 것이 아니냐는 그런 시각들이 많습니다. 언제쯤 중국이 금리를 올리고 또 이게 중국 경제에 미치는 영향은 어떨지 궁금합니다.
There's inflation is picking up. Inflation is picking up relatively fast. The government is is worried, so it wants to control money supply. So the main policy tool right now is to increasing bank reserve deposit reserve ratio. I think that the government will increase it by another 1 to 1.5 percentage points by the end of the year. The problem is that it's not that effective because the interest rate has not been raised. So I think that the Chinese government will raise interest rate very soon. Probably in either this month, in June, or next month, China will raise interest rate. And China needs to raise interest rate a lot to contain inflation. So it's going to be a process. Interest rate will keep going up.
그 비슷한 이야기일 수 있겠는데요. 그 금리 인상과 더불어서 위안화 절상에 대한 논의들도 많이 있는데 그 위안화 절상도 비슷하게 맞물려서 이루어지게 될지 아니면이 아니라 그 위안화 절상이 이루어지게 되면 그 주변국들에는 또 어떤 영향을 미칠지 의견 좀 부탁드리겠습니다.
I think the Chinese currency is up against the dollar 20% since 2005. And there will be maybe a little bit more appreciation later this year, but it will not be major. Chinese government prefers to increase labor income like a wage rather than increase the exchange rate. So what I see is that over the next 3 years, Chinese labor wage will go up, maybe at 15 to 20% per annum, while the exchange rate will remain fairly stable, not much appreciation.
좀 다른 얘기인데 최근 들어서 한국과 중국과 일본 사이의 그 FTA 자유무역 협정에 대한 논의가 진행되고 있는데 그것과 관련해서 중국 경제 또는 이 중국, 일본 등 이 동북아 지역에서의 그 경제적 상황은 어떻게 좀 변할 것으로 보세요?
I think that would be a very good idea for 3 countries to have an FTA. But I doubt it will happen soon because all 3 countries are manufacturing export oriented. And they are worried about competition from each other. So I think that it will be a gradual process. The first step instead is a free trade agreement with Southeast Asia. China is signed already, and Japan is working on that, and Korea, I don't know when it may follow. So through free trade with a third party like Southeast Asia, maybe these 3 countries will become more complementary. Otherwise, I think that right now it's very difficult.
그 최근에 그리스나 또 스페인, 또 헝가리 이런 그 유럽권의 위기들이 점차 번져가고 있는 모습을 보이고 있는데 이 상황이 얼마나 위기적이라고 보시는지 그리고 이 위기적인 재정 위기라고 하는 이 유럽권의 위기를 그 유럽권에서 공조해서 해결해 나가려는 노력들이 그 옳은 방향이라고 보시는지에 대해서 궁금합니다.
Yeah, I think that so far European countries have formed a fund of $1 trillion to help the countries in trouble. I think this is a fiscal approach. It's like forming a European IMF. I don't think that that is a sufficient answer. Ultimately, the European Central Bank will need to will need to bail out the troubled financial institutions that have bought a lot of debts from the troubled countries. So I think the eventual policy response will be very similar to the Fed's policy response to the U.S. debt crisis. Basically, bailing out financial institutions like the banks. That will lead to more money supply and euro weakness.
이 유럽권의 재정 위기가 그 중국의 아까 맨 처음에 말씀하시긴 했지만 그 유럽에 대한 그 중국의 수출 그리고 중국의 그 중국이 진행하고 있는 긴축 정책 그리고 또 나아가서 이 중국의 어떤 경제 그 발전에 그 좋지 않은 영향을 미칠 수 있다는 의견도 있는데 이것에 대해서는 어떻게 생각하십니까?
Yeah, Europe is a very large market for China. It's the second largest for China. Over 20% of China's exports go to Europe. So obviously, European economic crisis will have an impact on China's export performance over the next year or so. This is why many people want China to delay the exit of stimulus to keep this low interest rate and high fiscal spending policy. I think the conclusion is it's not conclusive yet how China will respond. And I think that some delay in stimulus exit is likely, but China is facing its own overheating problem. Inflation is really picking up. The government is worried. So that's why I think raising interest rate is inevitable and will happen soon, despite the European debt crisis.
그러니까 늘 그렇듯이 위기가 있으면은 중국의 어떤 고성장을 바탕으로 그 세계 경제가 위기를 좀 해소해 나가는 그 발판을 마련해 나가곤 했는데 그 이런 식의 중국의 급속 성장이 얼마나 더 이어질 수 있을지 그리고 또 중국이 언제까지 그 세계 경제의 모멘텀이 될 수 있을지에 대해서는 좀 의구심이 드는 부분이 있는데요. 이에 대해서는 어떻게 생각하시는지?
I think that China increased lending a lot last year, like a 9.6 trillion RMB. And that led to economic overheating, lots of property speculation, and now inflation. I think the Chinese government, in a way, panicked and overstimulated. It's not good to use stimulus too much. When the problems are structural, it cannot be solved with too much stimulus. So I think that it's inevitable we needed to have a period of slow economic growth and to allow the policies and as well as people and businesses to change. And I think for China, the biggest change is to increase consumption. That means that we need to increase wages first. And I think China is taking some steps in that direction. So in the next year or two, I think we should not expect China to grow like last year to save the world. Not likely. But if you take a 5-year view, when this consumption development becomes successful, then China will be a major force for supporting the global economy.
지금 답변하신 것과 연관돼서 생각할 수 있지만은 그 다음 그 금융위기 도래의 시기를 2012년쯤으로 그 지목을 하셨는데 그 근거랄까요? 그 근거는 무엇인지 그리고 그 폭발력은 얼마나 될지 궁금합니다.
I think the economic crisis happens because of policy mistakes. When the last crisis happened in 2008, we saw too much stimulus, too much money supply. So that leads to inflation. It takes time for money supply to become inflation. So there's like 4 to 5 years of lag. So that's why in 2012 we're going to see very serious inflation all over the world. And that will lead to policy tightening, interest rates going up, And that would, because that right now interest rates are so low, many people are borrowing money for speculation again. So when interest rates go up, these people will be hurt, and they would have to sell their assets to pay the debts. So that will lead to the asset prices going down in 2012 and interest rates going up. So it's very similar to early 1980s when Paul Volcker became the chairman of the Federal Reserve. When he raised the interest rate a lot, that led to a crash. And so the next crisis is due to the response to the last crisis not being appropriate, being excessive.
방금 말씀하신 부분이 한국의 저금리 기조에도 상당 부분 해당이 된다고 생각하는데 한국에도 비슷한 일이 생길 수 있다고 생각하십니까?
I think that Korea's domestic demand is not that strong. So in that regard, maybe you can say inflation is not that critical. However, because inflation in China is moving up, it will affect Korea. So I think Korea will have some inflation. At the same time, Korea's low interest rate policy has led to very high property price. And the high property price has led to a huge household debt increase. The loan deposit ratio in Korea now is over 100%. That's very dangerous. That's like Hong Kong in '97. So I think that the interest rate in Korea is also too low, and it's going to create problems for the future. When inflation becomes a problem, the central bank needs to raise interest rate. It may be too late because it may lead to a major crash in the property market, and that will affect the banking system. I hope the Korean government and the central bank will be mindful of such consequences.
좀 전에 얘기하신 부분, 아까 전에 말씀하신 부분 중에 중국 내 노동시장의 변화를 얘기를 하셨는데요. 지금 중국의 임금 수준이 상대적으로 한국이라든지 아니면 그 이상 선진국들의 수준으로 가기까지 어느 정도의 시간이 걸리고 어느 정도 빨리 진행이 될지에 대해서도 궁금합니다.
Well, the average wage right now in China is a bit over $300, about $350 per month. And for a factory worker, the minimum wage is like less than $150. And if they do overtime, amounting to 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, that's the total work time, they could earn $2,000. So it's about a bit under $300. So compared to $4,000 to $5,000 in the West, so it's still a long time to go. I think that in 5 years, the wage will double to $800. Then give it another 10 years, it will double again in the following 10 years to like $1,600, maybe to $2,000. So by 2025, China's labor wage level will be similar to Taiwan's today. So that I think very much ends China being a source of cheap labor, both in terms of blue collar as well as in terms of white collar.
지금까지 말씀을 들어보면은 전혀 중국에 대해서 비판적이라거나 일부에서 얘기하는 미국의 앵무새다 이런 비판이 전혀 어울리지 않으시는 것 같은데 특히나 성함이 우리말로 이제 국충을 쓰시는 분이 그런 말씀을 들으시는 것에 대해서 어떻게 생각하시는지 또 그렇게 비판을 하는 사람들에 대해서는 어떤 시각을 갖고 계신지 궁금합니다.
I think that being an analyst, when the first most important thing is to be objective. And it doesn't matter who you are. You have to tell the truth. I think I'm very critical of many things in China. For example, high property price. I think that's very unfair to average people. It's not a market phenomenon. It's a government phenomenon. And land is government owned. Because for average people, the amount of money the most money they save is for buying a property. So when property price is high, it's like a tax on the people. So I think that I'm very critical of this policy. But a lot of people in China wish property price to go up and up because they have their own properties. They think that is how they become rich. I think that's a very false perspective. The other is the stock market. The stock market in China does not reflect economic development. A lot of people think that the economy is developing. The stock market should go up. That is not necessarily true. When companies don't make money, even when the economy is growing, the stock market still will not go up. So I think a lot of people are very upset. The stock market is not going up, and they feel like they are not getting rich quick enough. And so that's why I think that they think that someone like me being negative on the stock market is hurting them. But I think that they are mistaken in the sense that the stock market does well only when the companies earn profits, when the companies are good at making money. It's not related to economic growth or what people like me say. It's not important. It's really about what the company's earnings are.
마지막으로 개인적인 질문을 하나 드리겠습니다. 처음에 젊은 시절에 토목공학도였던 걸로 아는데 나중에 이제 경제학자로 전공을 바꾸셨단 말이죠. 그때 계기가 무엇이 있었는지 궁금합니다.
Yeah, I majored in civil engineering in college. And then I went to the U.S. to study transportation systems, something that China needed at the time. But after I took an economics lesson, I really liked it. I thought that it's a way of thinking that I did not see before. It's really about it's system thinking. It's about seeing a situation, being able to conceptualize that, and being able to explain a situation and being able to predict a situation. So I thought that was like something I would love to do in the future. So that's why and also I thought that China lacked this type of knowledge more than engineering knowledge. So I shifted to economics. Fortunately, MIT Economics School is very technical, and they love people from engineering and from science side. So that's why they accept me.
예, 오늘 말씀 감사드리고요. 앞으로도 더욱 날카로운 통찰력 보여주시길 기대하겠습니다. 감사합니다.